disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, August 28th, 2026. Your readers today are Don Williams and J.J. Patek. I'm doing the first hour by myself, and J.J. will be along for the second hour. We have a little bit of an unusual format for today because of some meetings that are taking place, and we're trying to make this work. I think we'll do okay. Beginning on the front page, Homeland Security Job Expo called off over ICE concerns. This is from Sandra Tan, news staff reporter. What started as a recruiting event for careers ranging from cybersecurity to logistics with the Department of Homeland Security next week has become the target of security concerns and political objections, prompting the abrupt cancellation of the recruitment event. The cancellation, urged by community groups, centered largely on plans by DHS to recruit people to work for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE. Erie County Executive Mark C. Poloncarz and Buffalo Convention Center President and CEO Patrick Kaler issued a joint statement late yesterday afternoon regarding a scheduled two-day career expo at the Buffalo Convention Center by DHS, encouraging potential job seekers to protect the homeland by air, sea, land, and cyberspace. When word began circulating earlier this week that the recruitment event would include ICE, community protesters with Evict ICE and others began demanding that officials shut down the event. Efforts to allow the event to continue without ICE recruitment were unsuccessful. Poloncarz said he does not believe a publicly owned community asset such as the Convention Center should support recruitment efforts that, quoting him here, are inconsistent with the values we have repeatedly expressed as a welcoming community. Late yesterday afternoon, I was surprised and deeply troubled to learn that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has scheduled a career expo at the Buffalo Convention Center for September 1st and 2nd that includes the recruitment of federal immigration enforcement personnel, among other agencies, Poloncarz said. While the County of Erie owns the Buffalo Convention Center building, the county does not manage daily operations or event booking. Decades ago, the Buffalo Niagara Convention Center Management Corporation, that's BNCCMC, was created to manage the facility, including contracting bookings for all events. BNCCMC entered into the contract with DHS. As stated, I was not made aware of this event until late yesterday, and I have since learned members of the BNCCMC board were not made aware of it until yesterday as well. Erie County has a long and proud history of welcoming immigrants and refugees from around the world. They are neighbors, co-workers, small business owners, and friends, and they have made our community stronger. He and Kaler, head of Visit Buffalo Niagara, also expressed concern about public safety. I am also concerned that holding this event could result in significant protests and civil unrest, as has happened elsewhere, requiring an increased law enforcement presence without the benefit of a coordinated response plan between city and county officials, Poloncarz said. For that reason, I have strongly encouraged BNCCMC leadership to cancel the contract and inform DHS that the Buffalo Convention Center will not serve as the host site for this event, and that is exactly what has occurred. Due to a number of concerns, including the safety and security of the Buffalo Convention Center workforce and the general public, as well as the anticipated presence of protesters and counter-protesters, we have made the decision to cancel the Department of Homeland Security's Career Expo next week at the Buffalo Convention Center. We made a request to the Department of Homeland Security to move forward with an event that did not include Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Kaler said in the statement. When it became clear that was not possible, we made the decision to cancel, as we feel it's in the best interests of our community at this time. Other lawmakers have criticized the decision. The county executive is entitled to his views on federal immigration policy, Erie County legislator Lindsay Lorigo, a Republican from West Seneca, said in a statement. However, it is not the role of the county executive to determine which lawful employers Western New Yorkers should have the opportunity to meet or where our residents should seek employment. Continuing at the front page, Jennifer Dewey from the Bloomberg News tells us in escalation with Canada, Trump changes the name of Lake Ontario. President Trump announced he was moving to rename Lake Ontario as Lake America, escalating his clash with Canada after trade negotiations between the two nations collapsed. Trump yesterday signed a directive changing the name of the lake and said the move would take place, quoting here, effective immediately. The president previewed the move in a social media post earlier this week. The order signed by Trump said the Interior Department had 30 days to change the name in federal databases and materials. Canada has been ripping us off for a long time on trade, Trump said when asked what message he was sending to the United States' northern neighbor. They want to be treated like they're a state, and so we just can't do that anymore. Lake Ontario is one of the Great Lakes and straddles the U.S.-Canada border between the state of New York and the province of Ontario. Canada is virtually certain to reject Trump's unilateral move to rename the body of water. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said yesterday that Lake Ontario will continue to be called by that name. The name is more than 400 years old, predating both the Confederation of Canada and the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America, Carney said on X. Canadians also know that naming reality means calling it Lake Ontario, then, now, and always. Throughout his second term, Trump has routinely sought to belittle and humiliate Canada, including by referring to it as the 51st U.S. state, as he criticized the country's trade practices as unfair to U.S. businesses. Critics, including some members of his own party, have decried the president's attacks on Canada, calling them a counterproductive affront to one of Washington's closest allies. Trump last year renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, another jab at a U.S. neighbor and major trading partner. The name change applies to federal documents and communications and has not been broadly recognized by other countries, including Mexico. If you think about it, we have a Gulf and we have a lake now. All we need is an ocean. So maybe we'll need to change the name of the Atlantic and or the Pacific. Maybe we'll change them, the president said. And Trump's move marks the latest volley in the trade war between the two traditional allies, which erupted after the United States imposed a 50% tariff on billions of dollars worth of Canadian goods after the breakdown of talks. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney responded with a set of retaliatory duties that are set to take effect September 8th. The president responded by vowing to double tariffs on automobiles and parts from Canada to 50% starting in January. The Trump administration is discussing additional trade penalties and other actions against Canada following the announcement of Ottawa's countermeasures, Bloomberg News previously reported. High-level trade talks between the two sides have yet to resume. Negotiations fell apart at the 11th hour after pressure from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who viewed the deal as too generous to Canada, according to people familiar with the matter. Canadian officials have accused Trump's team of trying to change the terms at the last minute. Lutnick yesterday accused Canada of walking away from the table for political purposes, with Carney supporting to consolidate support ahead of elections in Quebec and a preliminary vote on independence for Alberta scheduled for October. My guess will be as soon as his elections are over, you're going to see a plane full of Canadian negotiators flying down, going, come on, we'll give it to you before your election. We're just being used by them, right? Lutnick told reporters in Washington. Trump has indicated he's willing to wait, repeatedly insisting that the U.S. does not need Canadian products to fuel the economy. But despite those claims, Trump acknowledged this week that the U.S. relies on Canada for aluminum supplies as the country builds up a domestic industry. Selfishly, we need aluminum in this country, Trump said during a telephone rally for Mike Mazzei, a Republican candidate for governor in Oklahoma. We don't have it. We get it all from Canada for the most part, and we need it badly. Finally, from the front page, Mackenzie Schumann, the news staff reporter, says the cost of search for toxic waste is nearing $1 million. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has spent close to $1 million so far on the ongoing search for radiation contamination in Erie and Niagara counties, and the final cost will certainly be higher. The federal agency had spent about $460,000 on personnel costs and $500,000 to use a specialized airplane to search for elevated radiation levels, bringing the total to $960,000, according to EPA spokesperson Stephen McBay. EPA began planning the aerial survey in 2023 and conducted flights in 2023 and 24, covering approximately 15,000 flight miles across Erie and Niagara counties, McBay wrote in an emailed statement to the Buffalo News. EPA later transitioned to roadway-based surveys to scan for gamma radiation above normal background levels. Roadway survey work in Niagara County was conducted in 2025 and 26 and covered approximately 1,000 road miles. The costs include only those incurred from October 2023 through June 26. The information sent to the news did not include any costs associated with the on-the-ground radiation surveys conducted in western New York. The EPA, alongside the State Department of Environmental Conservation, has surveyed more than 700 properties in Erie and Niagara counties to search for radioactive waste. Because that work is ongoing and involves personnel and resources from multiple agencies, EPA has not yet compiled a complete cost for the current field operation, McBay wrote in his email. Of the 726 properties surveyed as of Monday, 506 properties, or 70%, had been cleared, meaning there was no unnatural elevated radiation found on the property, according to DEC Commissioner Amanda Lefton. The remaining 220 were under review as of Monday afternoon, Lefton told the news. Ground surveys entail EPA and DEC staff walking handheld radiation detection equipment around residents' yards, businesses, or public parks. Another 30 properties were found to have elevated radiation levels, requiring further investigation by the EPA and DEC. That could entail taking soil samples and indoor dust and air samples. The continuing investigation grew out of the government's effort to locate potentially radioactive material associated with Western New York's history of uranium processing and other work connected to the nation's early nuclear program. The ground surveys have increasingly focused the investigation on individual properties. Just going to take a couple of moments now to go back to where we usually begin our broadcast on Friday mornings, for the weather. Today, clouds breaking with a high of 75, low of 55 later today. Tomorrow, partly sunny and pleasant with a high of 76 and a low of 59. Sunday, mostly cloudy with a high of 80 and a low of 65. Monday, humid with showers around, a high of 81 and a low of 69. More showers around on Tuesday and Wednesday, with highs in the upper 70s, lower 80s. And Thursday, finally back again with sunshine, but humid, with a high of 80 and a low of 66. High temperature yesterday, 77 here in Buffalo, and a low of 65. 200ths of an inch of precipitation on Thursday, bringing our total to date 30.60 inches, which is almost 6 inches more than, almost 5 inches, a little over 5 inches. I'm going to do this math one more time. I used to teach math. Almost 6 inches more than normal to date. And I got to say, most of that excess precipitation compared to normal occurred before the beginning of July, because it's been fairly dry since then. Today's forecast for the air quality is somewhere between good and moderate, not as nice as it's been. Most of the offender was particulates, pollen, considered high yesterday and today. So we'll see. The sun rose at 6:36 this morning and will set at 7:57 tonight. If you were looking for the lunar eclipse last night, it happened just about bedtime for me. Moon rose today at 8:08 and will set tonight at 6:58. National extremes: Lake Havasu City, California, Arizona. Lakes Havasu City, Arizona, 111 degrees, and Leadville, Colorado, for the second day in a row at 36. Does a sundial measure solar radiation? That's the trivia question for today. Well, no. It tells the time of day. I guess I thought everybody knew that, but they ask as a trivia question anyway. So, just to let you know where we stand, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and it's just about 15 minutes past the hour. Time to turn to the editorial pages. The local opinion is about cultural outreach. Erie County Libraries and Shays are becoming even more user-friendly. The $34.5 million expansion project of Shays Buffalo Theater isn't just good news, it preserves a landmark while making it functional for contemporary audiences. Shays is not altering its historic 3,019-seat theater. Instead, the expansion will address practical problems that affect the theater-going experience, including accessibility, bathrooms, circulation, concessions, and entrances. The timing for the upgrades to the National Historic Landmark is appropriate, as Shays is marking its 100th anniversary this year. Completion is expected in November of next year. As reported by the News' Jonathan Epstein, construction is well underway, with foundation walls poured on 3 sides of what will become a basement for storage and mechanical equipment and other uses, and work is expected to shift to the vertical phase. Shays Performing Arts Center CEO Brian Higgins says the institution is laying the foundation for the next century, one that will bring unprecedented accessibility to Shays visitors for generations to come. That gets to an important principle of historic preservation. Preserving a landmark shouldn't mean freezing it in time. Shays and its supporters are wisely focused on accommodating today's theatergoers while preparing the institution for generations to come. The best way to ensure Shays survives for another century is to preserve what makes the theater irreplaceable while modernizing the things that can make a century-old building difficult to use. And the other half of the article, the editorial, check it out. In the spirit of allowing public institutions to evolve creatively to meet what their communities need, a Brightside story shows how local libraries are offering much more than books, movies, and CDs. The News' Matthew Trunfio cites North Collins Library's foldable kayaks as among many creative items in the Library of Things offered across Western New York. It is further proof that libraries have evolved from repositories of books into institutions that can provide access to amenities people can benefit from but don't necessarily need to own. Among the items available to borrow at various libraries are giant Jenga puzzle games, birding kits, record players, and more. The main branch of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library downtown is equipped with recording studios and guitars, drum kits, and synthesizers, along with the tools needed to record music. To walk by the library's studio is to feel transported into a different music-producing world. The equipment to turn vague musical ambitions into something real is waiting for patrons. The Library of Things push, which started in 2025, is intended to expand the ability of libraries to serve as community hubs that meet local needs. The items available vary from branch to branch, giving individual libraries some latitude to respond to the interest of their constituencies. In an evolving world where capturing the attention of patrons requires thinking outside the box, the effort by the local library system is inventive and intriguing. Of course, turning the pages of books written by famous and not-so-famous authors will likely remain at the heart of any library, but there is nothing wrong with expanding the definition of a library collection, especially when doing so gives more people access to new life-expanding experiences. Well, longtime library fan here applauds this move to expand the reach of the libraries. On the editorial cartoon category, Michael Ramirez, well-known and frequently appears in our editorial pages. Michael Ramirez of the Creators Syndicate has a gloved hand, one of those nitrile gloves, holding a vial labeled Anti-Vax Stupidity Vaccine, an unlimited dose vial. And the caption says, "One day." Dream on, Michael. And then also the Creators Syndicate, Tom Stiglich, says, "Meanwhile in Canada," and it has a pretty redhead tied up with a rope labeled U.S. tariffs, and one of the famous mounted police, the RCMPs, tied up with a rope that's labeled retaliatory tariffs, and there's this horse standing by, and the two of them are tied up, laying on a railroad track, and the Mountie is saying, "Don't worry, I'll save you." So that's meanwhile in Canada. Well, we're going to turn now to the big editorial for the day from the Tribute Content Agency. Clarence Page, a frequent writer for this spot in the paper. Why Americans have a right to know just who Natalie Harp is. It's summertime, and the living is uneasy, particularly in Washington newsrooms and bureaus. At this time of year, historically serious news can be harder to find than the people available to cover it. The result is what journalists call the silly season, when you can never guess what pseudo-story will get elevated to the headlines. Searching for silly news in seriously serious Washington can be easier than you might think, and of late is becoming difficult to draw the line between the consequential and the absurd. Consider the kerfuffle raised around a remark by Senator Jon Ossoff, a Georgia Democrat, often mentioned among presidential hopefuls, about President Trump and a young female aide. Ossoff angered Team Trump and Trump himself by calling suggestive attention to the relationship widely described as exceptionally close between the president and Natalie Harp, his 35-year-old executive assistant. He doesn't want to do the job, Ossoff declared to an enthusiastic crowd, regarding Trump's air of befuddlement amid a swirl of crises bedeviling his administration. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar. With Natalie, those two words ignited the crowd and delighted down in the dumps Democrats elsewhere, who in this polarized election season are looking exceptionally hard for candidates who show backbone. And they were not alone. A brief soundbite from Ossoff's 30-minute speech drew more than 5 million views on X and a volcanic backlash from Republicans, including Harp's boss, who shot back calling Ossoff a Pee Wee Herman lookalike after mistakenly calling him Pinky Herman. A chorus of MAGA influencers took to social media to post their outrage that this upstart cad from Georgia had impugned the honor of a blameless professional woman. Even former House Speaker Newt Gingrich got the bat signal, and he assailed Ossoff on X for misogynistic language, diminishing and smearing someone who is simply doing their job. It was interesting for reporters and talking heads, with nothing else going on, to observe a familiar tactical maneuver on the political battlefield, with the Trump camp preparing to isolate and smother Ossoff under a social media dogpile and to pummel Democrats on an issue they supposedly own. But I would caution those who are eager, for whatever reason, to jump on the bandwagon that sees Ossoff's barb as sexual innuendo. It would bother me if all the Harp chatter was about spreading salacious rumors about an attractive young woman working with an older boss. We've seen this too many times before. You might even say it's the way of the world, I guess, but without real evidence to back it up. I don't want to be part of the rumor mills. I would also suggest that Ossoff's comment was not intended to suggest a sexual relationship, although I acknowledge that such an explanation is exactly the misdirection GOP strategists would want to create. Rather, this story is about Trump's deep pathological need for sycophancy. Throughout his careers in business and politics, Trump has always sought to display his dominance. It's no surprise, then, that in his televised cabinet meetings, his closest advisors vie to outdo each other in displays of flattery. What's important about Harp's relationship to Trump is not the prurient interest, but rather that she seems to be, as New York Times White House reporter Maggie Haberman put it, sort of his binky, for lack of a better word, his comfort blanket, and consequently, she seems to be his main conduit to reality. We have little idea who Harp is, and the more we learn, the more anxious we ought to be. Harp is referred to by many as Trump world. I'm going to say it again. Trump is referred to by many in Trump world as the human printer for her role supplying the president with printed copies of everything from news reports to social media chatter. In fact, according to a report 2 years ago in The Bulwark by the well-sourced reporter Mark Caputo, Harp actually trails Trump everywhere with a portable printer in tow. She reportedly works 7 days a week, texts with world leaders on his behalf, and stays up late with him drafting social media posts. This has made her extremely influential. As one source told Caputo, if you want the president to see something, the best route is Natalie. She also doesn't seem to have a boss other than Trump, and it seems she may have worked for a year in her highly sensitive position without a security clearance. Over the years, questions have arisen about who controls Trump's social media accounts and gatekeeps the often toxic messages that emanate from them. Some observers suggest that Harp is a central player. I was downright outraged by reports that Harp sent out the racist video on Trump's Truth Social account that portrayed former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. Some of us take that personally, not that Trump appears to care. The post, created under Trump's direction, appeared in February at the end of a minute-long video promoting false claims about the 2020 elections. It was deleted about 12 hours later after a furious bipartisan backlash. But as one who believes in free speech and our democratic system, I hold the faith that such cheap shots will be punished sooner or later by the voters. That's the way democracies mete out political justice. It's not perfect, but it offers an irreplaceably valuable change for us voters to be heard. And we need every chance we can get. That's the opinion of Clarence Page of the Tribune Content Agency. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. It's about 26 and a half minutes past the hour. We're going to turn to My View. This one from Angelo Daloisio of Alden. He recalls that he had a lot to learn as a teacher. The headline, as a teacher, always look to learn. As a 50-year teacher before he retired, I subscribed to that view very heartily. Mr. Daloisio says, in 1970, I walked across the stage at Buffalo State and received a folder with a certificate inside that proclaimed I had now satisfied all the requirements to become an industrial arts teacher. I was now capable of teaching 9 different subject content courses. Yes, a certified shop teacher. I spent the next 30-plus years teaching in middle school, high school, and college environments, as well as a few years as an instructor for the Army and Air Force. I learned a few things that might be useful to someone entering the classroom in a few weeks. Read Frank McCourt's book, Teacher Man, to understand this. Along the way, you will realize that you didn't learn everything that being a teacher requires. You will not always be able to pick the place you work. You are now part of the world's oldest profession. Yes, even that other oldest profession had to learn their trade from someone. If you became a teacher to enjoy weekends, holidays, and snow days off and relaxing in the summer, you became a teacher for the wrong reason. If you do your job well, you will at times become more tired and fatigued than you would have if you'd labored in a physical job for 40 hours a week. Dress nicely. Just because your students apply the latest styles and trends, look the part and you will feel the part. You can never pick the administrator that will be your boss or the person you might share an office with. I was fortunate enough to have worked under Joe Christina at Erie Community College and Bob Farwell at Orchard Park High School, both excellent administrators and people. I shared an office with Steve Kennedy at OPHS and Fred Adcock at Lowry Middle School, 2 of the most driven teachers I ever encountered. Don't strive to become friends with students. Your role is to impart knowledge. If friendship occurs, always maintain the separation of roles. Ask for a mentor to help you adjust. Get to know the custodial staff and respect them. If you have to go into school on a Saturday or day off, bring them breakfast. I learned early on that the person with the keys hanging on their belt can help you in a time of need. Stay current in your field. Don't become stale. Remember that you can always learn something from your students. Get involved. Become an advisor. Don't let the faculty lounge become a destination. If you don't feel well, stay home or take a mental health day. There will be times that the classroom is the last place you want to be or the place you eagerly look forward to each day. You will be on stage every day. Always bring your A game to work. Students will see through you quickly if you're a phony. Be yourself. Find creative ways to present your subject matter. Take chances as teachers and do something new. Get the kids excited and don't be afraid of failure. As the saying goes in hockey and skiing, get out over your edges. Don't hide behind your desk or a podium. Move about the room and get their heads to follow. As you look out at those in front of you, keep in mind that down the road, many will become successful, and many will become people you will read about in the newspaper for the wrong reasons. Sit in every desk to see what they see and get their perspective. Well, I can honestly say that I agree with just about everything he said. I didn't find a particular point of disagreement, but Mr. D'Aloisio has some very worthwhile advice to anyone beginning a career as a teacher or beginning a school year, even if you've done it for years. Sit back, take a look. Moving on to another voice, this one from Tom Secunda, co-founder and vice chairman of Bloomberg LP and chair of the Empire AI Board of Directors. Mr. Secunda says, artificial intelligence will reshape nearly every part of modern life. But the countries that lead this new era will not simply be those that build the best consumer products. They will be the ones that put the most powerful tools in the hands of their best scientists. This week, New York took a major step toward that. Empire AI Beta is fully online at the University of Buffalo. It is the most powerful academic AI research computer in the country, giving researchers at New York's leading universities access to computing power that, until recently, was largely available only inside the world's biggest technology companies. That matters because AI is more than a chatbot or a business application. It is a new scientific instrument, one that can help researchers understand diseases, discover medicines, model extreme weather, and solve problems that were previously too large or complex to tackle. This technology allows scientists to see further and move faster. Research that once required months can now be completed in days. Scientists can test more ideas, work with larger amounts of data, and pursue questions that would otherwise remain out of reach. No single university could have built a computer of this scale on its own. Empire AI exists because Governor Kathy Hochul, New York's public and private universities and philanthropy, chose to pool their resources and build something larger together. That partnership has placed Buffalo at the center of one of the most important technological transformations of our lifetime. The global race is moving quickly. China is investing aggressively in computing power and scientific capacity because its leaders understand that the discoveries made with these tools will shape economic strength, national security, and global influence for decades. America's greatest advantage remains our extraordinary universities, researchers, and culture of discovery. But talent alone is not enough. Our scientists need tools equal to the scale of the questions they are trying to answer. New York now has one of those tools. What happens next may include discoveries we can anticipate and many we cannot yet imagine. That is the promise of Empire AI Beta, and it is now beginning in Buffalo. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and it is now 33 minutes past the hour. This next piece is one of significance to me. I have an appointment with an eye doctor in a couple of weeks. As Medicare steps back, eye doctors turn to tech. This is from Phil Gallowitz of the KFF Health News. Temi Chalala, a retired dietitian in New York, was thrilled with the results of her cataract surgeries, which left her with close to 20/20 vision. She said she paid nearly $4,000 out of pocket for her 2 surgeries last year because she opted to have her doctor use a laser to assist with the procedure. Chalala, 69, chose that method over the traditional scalpel after doing research online and consulting with her doctors, believing it would give her the best outcome. It seemed like the better option, she said. Cataract surgery, one of the most common operations paid for by Medicare, typically leaves enrollees owing a few $100s. Some patients pay more to have their vision corrected during the procedure. But, like Chalala, a growing number of those patients are paying even more out of pocket simply because they agree to have their doctor use a laser rather than scalpel method. Both methods are safe and can significantly reduce or eliminate the need for patients to wear glasses. However, many doctors say the laser helps make more precise cuts than the scalpel. The laser method gives patients more options, they say, and recoups more revenue as Medicare has gradually cut what it pays doctors for cataract surgery. Others, such as Oliver Shine, an ophthalmologist at Johns Hopkins Medicine, point out the strong financial incentive to use the laser, as the equipment can cost a practice up to $500,000. Shine said his colleagues used the laser a few years after it came out, but did not see any benefit over traditional cataract surgery. Still, the laser doesn't cause harm and provides patients with good results. That's a powerful combination for a surgeon, Shine said, but in the end, he added, most patients believe paying more will yield a better result. Medicare pays doctors about $520 for a standard cataract procedure, down about 20% in the past decade. The fee includes pre- and post-operative visits. While Medicare generally prohibits doctors from billing patients above what the government program pays, doctors are allowed to bill patients extra when using the laser only when it is used to improve vision, because most vision correction is not covered by traditional Medicare. Specifically, doctors may bill patients when using the laser to insert premium lenses or to fix astigmatism. Doctors typically charge $1,000 to $3,000 per eye for use of the laser. Medicare enrollees also pay out of pocket for the premium lenses that can eliminate their need for reading or distance glasses, with charges ranging from $1,000 to $4,000. Private insurers, including those operating Medicare Advantage plans, typically follow Medicare benefit rules. Research shows the laser does not provide better outcomes than the scalpel for a standard cataract procedure. The American Academy of Ophthalmology, the world's largest organization of eye physicians and surgeons, says on its website, studies do not show that laser surgery results in fewer complications. Also, studies haven't found that laser surgery provides better outcomes. Nearly 12% of the $5 million annual cataract surgeries performed nationally are laser-assisted, and that number has been growing, according to the St. Louis-based ophthalmic market data company MarketScope. And doctor, said Kevin Miller, UCLA ophthalmology professor. Doctor makes a little more money on top of the Medicare reimbursement. The industry gets money to develop new technology, and society benefits because these patients are not going for eyeglasses anymore. By age 80, more than half of Americans have had cataracts, a condition that causes blurred vision and poor night vision. Most cataracts develop slowly as part of the aging process when proteins and fibers in the eye's lens break down and clump together. Doctors for decades have used scalpels to perform cataract surgery, which involves removing the cataract and replacing the cloudy natural lens with a clear artificial one. Barbara Kobutsi, 71, a billing consultant with traditional Medicare coverage, needed cataract surgery last year. When her eye doctor in New Jersey recommended she get the surgery using a laser at a cost to her of $1,500 per eye, she went looking for a second opinion. I felt like he was trying to pull a fast one. Kalusi said the second doctor performed her procedure without a laser, and she was happy with the results, including no longer needing glasses for distance vision. Doctors are using the laser as a moneymaker, she said. Vance Thompson, an ophthalmologist who was a past president of the American Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgery, said some patients want the laser because it provides a more precise way of doing the surgery, while others choose it to avoid the need for glasses. He said he talks to patients about the advantages of the laser and lets them decide which method is right for them. They deserve to be educated on all their options, Thompson said. He said about half his patients at Sioux Falls, South Dakota practice choose the laser, up from about 10% a decade ago. The laser is not suitable for all patients, though, including those who have corneal scarring or a small pupil, Thompson said. It's challenging to illustrate the benefit of the laser because traditional cataract surgery is already safe and effective with low infection rates, said Barrett Eubanks, a U.S.-trained ophthalmologist in Toronto. He said he's found that compared with the older method, using the laser makes it easier to implant premium lenses or remove certain types of cataracts. That's because the laser can make the exact cut it's programmed to make, unlike the human hand. Miller, the UCLA ophthalmologist, said the laser helps bring money to his practice as Medicare reimbursement continues to decline. One of the problems with ophthalmology is everybody is scrambling to keep the lights on, he said. Miller said his practice has offered laser cataract surgery for several years. He compares the choice to buying a Toyota Camry or buying a Lexus. Both will get you where you want to go, but one will get you there with a premium feel and leather seats, he said. He said his patients know they can choose the surgery without a laser. We do not pressure anybody to do anything, Miller said. At his practice in an affluent part of Los Angeles, he said 80% of patients opt for laser cataract surgery. What you buy with a laser is precision and reproducibility, as every laser cut looks exactly the same, he said. It does not make vision better. Well, I may be talking to my doctor about that in a couple of weeks. At 80 years of age, I know I've got some cataracts. Whether they're growing enough to be a concern, we'll see. Turning now to the local news, Ben Sugimoto, news staff reporter, tells us the Buffalo School Board was in a pickle. Its choices at Wednesday's special board meeting in City Hall were to approve an $81 million contract with the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, representing a $30 million increase over a span of 5 years, or forego transportation for high school students when school starts September 3rd. We're getting strong-armed by the NFTA, Park District Representative Eric Bowen said. It does seem like that. It's a very large number, but our kids can't get to school if we don't vote on this. After about 25 minutes of voicing frustrations about the predicament and committing to demanding more of the longtime transportation partner, the board voted 8-0 to approve the contract. Vice President Adriana Zulich was a yes with reservations, while West District Representative Talia Rodriguez was absent from the meeting. The NFTA on Thursday called accusations of strong-arming to be unfair and inaccurate. Spokesperson Helen Tedros said that negotiations began in January and that the authorities board had approved the contract at its July meeting. Throughout that process, we have approached the negotiations in good faith, remained open and transparent, and collaboratively ended with a contract that was more than $1 million under budget for BPS, cost neutral for us, and on a per-student basis less than half the cost of Yellow Bus service. Earlier in the meeting, Interim President Ebony Prophet Bullock and Chief Financial Officer Jim Barnes urged the board to approve the contract, advising that signing the deal would not put an end to the district's advocacy. Prophet Bullock said it was vital for children to be able to get to school. We have kids who can't eat. We have kids that are unhomed, and the only real heat, the only real comfort, the only real food they get is when they are in our schools, the interim superintendent said, and that is extremely important. Board members were first exposed to the contract a week ago on the day of the scheduled August board meeting for which school district officials took responsibility. The group then urged Prophet Bullock to remove the contract from consideration so members could have more time to have their questions answered. Most centered on explanations for the cost increases and what benefit the new deal would have for the district. The contract was unchanged from a week ago, district officials said, which irked some board members. I feel if we're going to approve this and vote on this, we should be receiving more specials, said Stefan Wright, a Ferry District board member, referring to buses the NFTA designates specifically for the district. We spend a lot of money on Saturday academy programming and night programming, and the parents and students don't have a way to even attend these programs to have our numbers where they need to be. The district and participating charter and private schools receive a maximum of 118 special routes per day. City residents might be familiar with the NFTA buses that pull up alongside McKinley High School. New North District Representative Roscoe Henderson III brought to light that the NFTA was not open to a one-year extension on the current contract. Some of the cost increases still did not make sense to some board members. Clearly, that public schools are being charged $15 more for a bus pass than the average citizen with limited access. I just don't understand the scope, the nature, the explanation, Board President Kathy Evans-Brown said. None of it. Prophet Bullock said she anticipates significant relief from the Buffalo Schools community after she signs the contract. She mentioned parents and administrators feared the possibility of no public bus passes. I had high school principals today that were digging in their pockets, digging into retirements, trying to figure out money, selling chicken dinners to get money to buy passes because they were afraid that their children were not going to be able to get there on September 3rd, she said. So I can tell them they don't have to do that. The NFTA on Thursday said it was pleased the deal had been approved. We appreciate the board understanding the value of NFTA services for students, and now we can all focus on moving forward and making sure students and families have a smooth transition for the new school year, Tedros said. Prophet Bullock said the board's concerns about the contract before voting on the deal should send a message to the NFTA. This is us holding the NFTA accountable, Prophet Bullock said. This is saying publicly you can't strong-arm us. We know we have to do business with you, and we're going to work on what we need to work on, but we're not for the foolishness. She finished on a softer note. Sometimes we have to get in there and push and dust it up a little bit, Prophet Bullock said. But tomorrow we are friends again. Tomorrow we are community. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Here they are in alphabetical order. Cooper, Carl A. of Rushford. Clock, Ann M. She died in Chicago, but she was born in Buffalo. Died last week. Yes, well, sorry, earlier this week at the age of 90. Mac, Shirley G. Nee Hogg. Pine, Carol Ann. Nee Shimei. Shapiro, Annie, MD. Smutko, Dr. George E. And Frey, Mamie. A couple of big obituaries. One from Belgrade and The Hague. Ratko Mladic, convicted of genocide for orchestrating the 1995 massacre of at least 8,000 Muslims in a UN-designated safe area of Bosnia. That was Europe's worst atrocity since World War II. He died yesterday in UN custody. The slaughter in Srebrenica was the grisly culmination of a war that lasted over 3 years, in which the general pounded the besieged capital Sarajevo daily with the artillery, tanks, mortars, and heavy machine guns of his nationalist Serb army, killing 10,000. The dead from Srebrenica were bulldozed into mass graves over 4 days in July 1995, some of them dug up and relocated to remote mountains so as to hide evidence of the killings. And then we have one a little bit more upbeat. J.P. Morgan, 94 years of age, singer and actress, largely known for her appearance on television specials and game shows like The Gong Show. She died at age 94 on Wednesday of natural causes, her representative said. She had been living with her nephew and niece, Duke Morgan Spencer and Peggy Sue Spencer, in Longview, Washington. She made a name for herself as a singer in the 50s with recordings of the songs like Life is Just a Bowl of Cherries, and That's All I Want From You. Oh, she's largely remembered for her time on TV. She was a vocalist on the ABC quiz show Stop the Music. Around the time she was a regular on the CBS daytime variety program, The Robert Q. Lewis Show. She frequented game shows and talk shows, including Hollywood Squares, The Mike Douglas Show, Hollywood Connection, and The Merv Griffin Show. Married 3 times, including to musician Art Kane, with whom she adopted her late son, Paul Kane. In 1954, she was honored as the year's best female vocalist by Downbeat and Cashbox magazines. J.P. Morgan, dead at age 94. Again, if you want any further information on the names you heard in this list, give us a call at 716-821-5555. Turning now to the stars, Georgia Nichols says, "You're a determined, inventive nonconformist." That's a happy birthday for Friday, August 26th. I'll try again, August 28th, 2026. You're a determined, inventive nonconformist. You seek knowledge and ways to express your creativity, express adventures and major changes. Aries, this is a challenging day at work. Equipment breakdowns and unexpected problems including staff shortages might occur. People are also touchy tonight. Privacy. For Taurus, today you need to keep track of your money because something unexpected could impact your wealth through damage, loss, or theft. Social plans will change. Tonight, friendships. Gemini, it's the classic day for rebellion against authority. Your home routine might change. Equipment might break. Tread carefully. Tonight, be modest. Cancer, think before you speak because you might feel controlled by your impulses. This could get you in trouble. Be aware of everything you do. Tonight, check your finances. Leo, this is a challenging day in terms of dealing with your money, your possessions, as well as friends and groups. It feels like everything's up for grabs, and in a way, it is. Tonight, cooperate. Virgo, you might suddenly have an argument. Sudden upsets are classic. Equipment or cars might have sudden breakdowns. Your daily routine will not be the same. Keep your eyes open to avoid accidents. Tonight, work. For Libra, this is a tough day, but there are some blessings. For the most part, your work routine might be interrupted. Travel plans might suddenly change. It's the kind of day where you need to take 2 steps, where you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Tonight, get better organized. Scorpio, unexpected upsets with friends, groups, and financial institutions might take place today. People might quarrel about assets or money. Nevertheless, travel appeals. Keep your eyes open. Tonight, socialize. Sagittarius, this is the classic day for a public argument or a rebellion. Don't throw your weight around. Be patient and tolerant with others. Tonight, relax at home. Capricorn, tread carefully because this is an accident-prone day. Pay attention to everything you say and do, especially related to your work. Travel will be interrupted or canceled. Be alert. Tonight, intense conversations. Aquarius, today is full of all kinds of unexpected events and little rebellions. However, this wild energy will likely impact your possessions, money, and shared property. Social plans will suddenly change. Tonight, check your belongings. And finally, for Pisces, this is a classic day for little rebellions and accidents. Equipment and cars might break down. Family arguments might take place. Stay chill. Tonight, you're in charge. And today in history, in 1833, there we go, 1833, United Kingdom Slavery Abolition Act received royal assent after passing Parliament. Upon going into effect the following year, it freed more than 800,000 enslaved people in the Caribbean and South Africa, though most had to serve as apprentices for another 4 to 6 years. The act made Canada a free territory for enslaved people from America. As we know, a lot of those folks wound up going through the Buffalo area on their way north. In 1837, pharmacists John Lee and William Perrins of Worcester, England, began manufacturing Worcestershire sauce. Lee and Perrins Worcestershire sauce. In 1879, King Seshtuayo, the last great king of the Zulus, was captured by the British after his defeat in the British-Zulu War. In 1941, SS and police forces killed more than 23,000 Jews in occupied Ukraine. Soldiers marched like victims to bomb craters at Kamenets-Podilsky and turned machine guns on them. In 1955, Emmett Till, a 14-year-old, was kidnapped and lynched by white men in Money, Mississippi. And in 1963, the March on Washington took place, drawing about 200,000 peaceful protesters to the nation's capital to advocate for equal rights for Black Americans. One of the pinnacles of the civil rights movement, the day featured the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream." In business news, Zuckerberg planned for AI over the staff at Meta. In January, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his top lieutenants gathered for their annual leadership retreat at his Hawaii compound. There, they hatched a radical plan to reimagine work at the social media giant in the age of artificial intelligence. Codenamed Project OT, short for Organization Transformation, the plan envisioned an AI-native future for the owner of Facebook and Instagram. AI would take over much of the daily work performed by thousands of human employees. Virtual workers would be overseen by Meta inside Meta by smaller, talent-dense cadres of human staffers, according to an internal planning document reviewed by Reuters and 3 people familiar with the project. In scenario planning exercises, 2 of these people said executives explored slashing the size of many teams across Meta by as much as 60%. Some employees would be offered roles in new units, while others would be laid off as part of a culling that one human resources executive projected would be as big or bigger than the company's cuts of around 25% 3 years ago, according to another internal document. The restructuring would be carried out in 2 waves, beginning with the first purge in May and followed by another shakeup in November. Internal planning documents seen by Reuters showed layoffs would be supplemented with the closing of open positions and pushing people out who Meta believed are poor performers. performers. These and other details of the plan, including the scale of the restructuring, haven't been previously reported. But on the night of May 19th, just hours before the first layoff wave, Zuckerberg blinked. Meta laid off 10% of its employees the next day, but it called off planning for the November cuts, according to one internal document reviewed by Reuters. By then, Meta employees were in open revolt, convinced that the company's AI transformation initiatives were partly aimed at replacing them. Internal data was also suggesting that autonomous AI agent technology at the heart of the strategy was failing to deliver hoped-for productivity gains. Some investors were questioning what Meta had to show for its gargantuan spending on AI. This article reveals for the first time the rapid pace of the cuts Meta was considering, the thinking behind the plans, and how they quickly unraveled. Based on scores of internal documents, posts, and recordings reviewed by Reuters, as well as conversations with more than 20 people with knowledge of Meta's inner workings, the reporting shows how the social media giant attempted to position itself at the forefront of an AI-driven workplace overhaul, only to stumble in the execution. In response to this story, Meta confirmed the existence of Project OT, which it described as a year-long project focused on cost-cutting, redesigning team structures, and shifting staff into new priority areas, such as producing training data for its AI models. The company acknowledged that the plan was to be carried out in two waves and that the most drastic scenarios involved reducing the size of some of Meta's teams by up to 60%. But it declined to specify which units were involved and said several major ones weren't part of it. Meta said the scenarios included both layoffs and redeployments, and that the company at no point intended to lay off 60% of its entire workforce. Company leaders canceled plans for the second wave before determining how many people overall would lose their jobs, it said. As part of our company's restructuring earlier this year, we asked some teams to conduct a scenario planning exercise looking at the potential impact of redeployments, open role closures, and cuts, Meta said in a statement. This ultimately resulted in moving thousands of employees to do priority work on several newly established teams, as has been publicly reported. Ultimately, we didn't move forward with every scenario from the exercise, and it was never assumed we would. Now, you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, August 28th, on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after a short break. It's now, 58 minutes past the hour. And your readers today are Don Williams and J.J. Batak.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your reader for this hour is J.J. Patek. And we are on to city and region news from the Buffalo News. And Ben Sugimoto says the board okays a deal with the NFTA, decries strong-arm tactics. The Buffalo School Board was in a pickle. Its choices at Wednesday's special board meeting in City Hall were to approve an $81 million contract with the Niagara Fund II Transportation Authority, representing a $30 million increase over a span of 5 years, or forego transportation for high school students when school starts September 3rd. We're getting strong-armed by the NFTA, Park District Representative Eric Boland said. It does seem like that. It's a very large number, but our kids can't get to school if we won't vote on this. After about 25 minutes of voicing frustrations about the predicament and committing to demanding more of the longtime transportation partner, the board voted 8-0 to approve the contract. Vice President Ariana Zolik was a yes with reservations, while West District Representative Talia Rodriguez was absent from the meeting. The NFTA on Thursday called accusations of strong-arming to be unfair and inaccurate. Spokesperson Helen Terderas said the negotiations began in January and that the authorities board had approved the contract at its July meeting. Throughout that process, we have approached the negotiation in good faith, remained open and transparent, and collaboratively ended with a contract that was more than $1 million under budget for BPS, cost neutral for us, and on a per-student basis, less than half the cost of yellow bus service, she said. Earlier in the meeting, Interim Superintendent Ebony E. Prophet Bullock and Chief Financial Officer Jim Barnes urged the board to approve the contract, advising that signing the deal would not put an end to the district's advocacy. Prophet Bullock said it was vital for children to be able to get to school. We have kids who can't eat. We have kids who are unhomed, and the only real heat, the only real comfort, the only real food they get is when they are in our schools, the interim superintendent said, and that is extremely important. Board members were first exposed to the contract a week ago on the day of the scheduled August board meeting, for which school district officials took responsibility. The group then urged Prophet Bullock to remove that contract from consideration so members could have more time to have their questions answered. Most centered on explanations for the cost increases and what would benefit the new deal it would have for the district. The contract was unchanged from a week ago, district officials said, which irked some board members. I feel like we're going to approve this and vote on this. We should be receiving more specials, said Stephen Wright, the Ferry District's board member, referring to buses the NFTA designates specifically for the district. We spent a lot of money on Saturday academic programming and night programming, and the parents and students don't have a way to even attend these programs to have our numbers where they need to be. The district and participating charter and private schools receive a maximum of 118 special routes per day. City residents might be familiar with the NFTA buses that pull up alongside McKinley High School. The New North District Representative Roscoe Henderson III brought to light that the NFTA was not open to a one-year extension on the current contract. Some of the cost increases still did not make sense to some board members. Clearly, that public schools are being charged $15 more for a bus pass than the average citizen with limited access. I just don't understand the scope, the nature, and the explanation, Board President Kathy Evans Brown said. None of it. Prophet Bullock said she anticipates significant relief from the Buffalo schools community after she signs the contract. She mentioned parents and administrators fear that the possibility of no public bus passes. I had high school principals today that were digging in their pockets, digging into their retirements, trying to figure out money, selling chicken dinners to get money to buy passes because they were afraid that their children were not going to be able to get there on September 3rd, she said. So I can tell them they don't have to do that. The NFTA on Thursday said it was pleased the deal had been approved. We appreciate the board understanding the value of NFTA services for students, and now we can all focus on moving forward and making sure students and families have a smooth transition for the new year, Tedros said. Prophet Bullock said the school board's concerns about the contract before voting on the deal should send a message to the NFTA. This is us holding the NFTA accountable, Prophet Bullock said. This is saying publicly you can't strong-arm us. We know we have to do business with you, and we're going to work on what we need to work on, but we're not for the foolishness. She finished on a softer note. Sometimes we have to get in there and push and dust it up a little bit, Prophet Bullock said. But tomorrow we are friends again. Tomorrow we are community. Then from Dan Herbeck, man pardoned for Capitol riot faces felony weapons charges. A man who received a presidential pardon from President Trump last year was charged Thursday with 6 felony and 1 misdemeanor weapons crimes following an investigation by Amherst Police and the Erie County District Attorney's Office. The charges against Thomas F. Sibick, 40, were unsealed Thursday morning in connection with the seizure of weapons from an Amherst home on June 8th following an argument between Sibick and a woman who lives at the home. Charged with 5 felony counts of criminal possession of a weapon and a misdemeanor of criminal mischief, Sibick could face 7 years in state prison if convicted of the most serious charge, according to Erie County District Attorney Michael J. Kane. Sibick is scheduled to appear in court again September 2nd before State Supreme Court Justice Deborah A. Haendiges. If he is convicted, there will be no presidential pardon in this case, authorities said, because Sibick faces charges under state criminal law which cannot be forgiven by a president. While Sibick and the woman were inside her garage on June 8th, the victim attempted to leave in a vehicle, Kane said in a statement. The defendant allegedly pushed the car door open and grabbed the victim's purse and phone charging cable, which damaged the cord. The defendant is accused of intentionally causing damage to the victim's cell phone screen protector by throwing the phone on the ground. After the victim left the home, she reported the incident to police. Amherst officers who responded to the home seized several firearms and extended magazines of ammunition, Kane said. He said the weapons included 2 semi-automatic rifles exhibiting assault weapon characteristics and 3 loaded large-capacity cartridge magazines. Officers also recorded equipment that could be used to create an operable semi-automatic rifle with assault weapon characteristics. Sibick was sent to federal prison 4 years ago for his actions during the January 6th of 2021 riot in Washington, D.C. involving people who were unhappy with President Trump's election loss to Joe Biden. Sibick admitted to FBI charges that he stole a badge and police radio from a police officer who was under attack and being threatened with death by rioters at the nation's capital. The victim had obtained a temporary order of protection against Sibick, and he is being held without the opportunity for a bail release, authorities said. Sibick's father, Dr. Eugene Sibick, told the Buffalo News he feels his son is being unfairly targeted by law enforcement because of his arrest and pardon after the January 2021 riot. His son has a solid job as a financial director for a medical office and is a decent, caring, nonviolent individual, said Dr. Sibick, a dentist. Sibick's attorney, Daniel J. Dubois, could not immediately be reached for comment after the Thursday indictment. He told the news earlier that Sibick denies allegations of wrongdoing. Sibick is one of more than 1,500 people who were pardoned by Trump from convictions related to the 2021 riot. At least 98 of those people have since been arrested again on charges ranging from minor property damage crimes to stalking, child molestation, and other sex crimes, according to a study conducted by Lawfare, a nonprofit news publication. And Hochul allows towns to impose bed taxes. This is from Robert Gavin, the Albany bureau chief. Guests staying at lodging hotels in the towns of Amherst and Lancaster, the village of Batavia, and the village of Ellicottville will pay new motel occupancy taxes under bills Governor Kathy Hochul has signed into law. The taxes across 3 counties follow similar impositions of hotel occupancy taxes previously imposed in Buffalo and Cheektowaga to raise revenue. The new laws include Amherst will impose a tax of up to 2.5% at town lodging locations, which follows a town resolution passed in favor of the levy. In a memo of support for the bill, its sponsors, Assembly Member Karen McMahon, Democrat from Williamsville, and Senator Jeremy Zellner, a Democrat from Tonawanda, said Amherst, which has 25 hotels, attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors, including sports fans, at the local, regional, college, and national level. They said revenue generated by the tax will offset costs to Amherst for sponsoring large tournaments and allowing the town to reinvest in its key assets. The tax, which goes into effect immediately, expires at the end of 2029. It would be paid in addition to Erie County's occupancy tax of 5% on large hotels and 3% on smaller lodging locations. Lancaster will impose a tax of up to 3% lodging at locations to raise revenue for downtown revitalization, development of tourism, pedestrian safety, improvements to infrastructure, and quality of life projects, according to a memo from the bill's sponsors, Assemblymember Patrick Kludzinski, Republican from Cheektowaga, and Senator Patrick Gallivan, a Republican from Elma, to justify the action. The tax, which goes into effect immediately and expires at the end of 2029, will be paid in addition to Erie County's occupancy taxes. Batavia will impose a tax of up to 3% at city lodging locations. The levy is a common tool used by municipalities to generate funds without directly burdening residents, stated the bill's sponsors, Assembly Member Stephen Hawley, the Republican from Batavia, and Senator George Borrello, the Republican from Sunset Bay, in a memo justifying the measure. It said the tax would ensure that visitors of Batavia contributed to the city's infrastructure, public services, and community improvement to offset the cost of tourism and enhance local services and support business initiatives and community investment projects. The tax goes into effect immediately and expires at the end of 2029, and the tax will be paid in addition to Genesee County's 3% bed tax. Ellicottville will impose a tax of up to 5% at village lodging locations. The bill sponsors Borrello and Assemblymember Joseph Sempolinski, a Republican from Canisteo, said the tax would enable visitors to the village to contribute to Ellicottville's infrastructure, public services, and community improvements to offset tourism expenses, improve local services, and support economic development and community investment projects. The tax, which expires at the end of 2027, will be paid in addition to Cattaraugus County's 5% hotel occupancy tax. Hochul also signed a bill to allow the city of Olean to grant exemptions on real property taxes, school taxes, and general taxes to Operation Warm Hearts, a charitable organization that provides clothes and accessories to needy children. Some of the Western New York lawmakers who sponsored bills to impose hotel occupancy taxes voted against similar bills for other jurisdictions. For instance, Kludzinski, the co-sponsor of the Lancaster tax, voted against the Amherst, Batavia, and Ellicottville taxes. McMahon, who co-sponsored the Amherst tax, voted against Batavia, Lancaster, and the Ellicottville tax. And from Jonathan Epstein, we have back to square one for downtown Hostel. This is from Buffalo's Next Development. It's back to the starting gate for Buffalo's efforts to revive the downtown hostel in a small Allentown apartment building. The Ryan administration has struck out on its first two attempts at seeking the redevelopment of a proposal by city-owned properties after receiving only one bid between the two solicitations. The Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency and the Office of Strategic Planning issued separate requests for proposals this summer for the hostel Buffalo Niagara buildings on Main and Washington Street and for a 6-unit apartment building that's been owned by notorious landlord Charles J. Dobucki. Both were put out in early July with deadlines on July 28th and August 11th, respectively. But only one proposal was submitted for the hostel from the hostel itself with developer Samuel Savarino and none for the Dobucki property at 2 St. Louis Place, says Deputy Mayor Thomas Baines, who oversees economic development under Mayor Sean Ryan. The single proposal is still being revived, Baines said, but instead of accepting it, he said city officials plan to reevaluate what they did and then try again with a new request for proposals in hopes of getting more interest on the second go-round. We're retooling to identify if there are other opportunities for us to reissue it more broadly, he said. Oftentimes, we'll just put it on the city website, but we definitely wanted to see if there's a way that we can get it out there so we can get a different type of response. The Ryan administration has expressed an intent to operate differently than previous city leadership, but the disappointing response to the two RFPs shows how much remains out of its control. With high interest rates for construction loans and mortgage and soaring costs of construction and materials, many developers remain largely on the sidelines until economic conditions improve. Baines acknowledged that the market has an impact, but suggested that the right building, the right scenario could still prove attractive. We want to make sure that we give out those that are the best opportunity, and we do that by making sure the information is widely received and available, he said. Bids were due by August 11th, but there was no response. The objective was to put it out and see the type of response we would get, Baines said. Unfortunately, it wasn't as robust as we would like, so therefore our objective is to sit down, reevaluate how we marketed it, what outlets we used, and see if we can ratchet up that effort so it can be better received more broadly. While I'm disappointed, it's not a total setback, said Common Council member Rich Nowakowski, who fought to get the city to take possession of the property. I understand there's more the city can do to make the RFP work better for a potential investor. I'm looking forward to working with the city and local partners to recalibrate and turn the property into productive use. And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and it's about 16 minutes past the hour, and we're going to move on to sports. And UB linebacker Bracey has a unique role. This is from Markel Slaughter. University of Buffalo linebacker Stevie Bracey may play most of his snaps on defense, but thanks to his brother's NFL pedigree, he also knows how to long snap the football. A fifth-year transfer from the University of Virginia, Bracey was an eighth grader when he began long snapping for his brother, Brandon Wright, who was at Georgia State at the time. Wright kicked and punted in college, and in 2020 he joined the Jacksonville Jaguars as an undrafted free agent punter before stints with the Los Angeles Rams and the USFL teams. An Atlanta native, Bracey relishes those times learning how to snap to Wright. It was the first time they performed football workouts together. Bracey said he actually began playing football before Wright, but his high school long snapping career came about because of him. He would come pick me up from the house in Atlanta, Bracey said. The Georgia State facility was only 20 minutes away. We'd go snap and he'd drop me right off back home. UB linebackers coach Alex Garwig said athletes with pro sports pedigree helped the evaluation process. UB sophomore safety Jonathan Ruthrow's brother Greg is a defensive end for the Buffalo Bills. Fifth-year cornerback Oliver Bridges, father of the same name, ran professionally after helping set the NCAA Division I 4x400 record at Howard in the 1980s. When we have players on the team who have family members who have played at a high level, it gives you some confidence that you know they've seen high-level football before, Garwick said. They know what it's like. They know what it takes. And the unique thing about Stevie is, because of his brother, we could tell that Stevie had a very clear vision about what he was looking for in his next opportunity. Garwig is in his first year at Buffalo after coaching Georgia Southern linebackers for one season. Garwick's first day at UB was during Bracey's official visit. Wright joined them for dinner. He was looking for somewhere with a strong linebacker play, Garwick said. He was also looking for somewhere with a strong special teams pedigree. UB coach Pete Lumbo brings that, so I think that this is a strong marriage for us. Bracey spent 4 years at Virginia before entering the transfer portal in January. During her meeting with UB, Bracey said Lumbo complimented his versatility at linebacker and long snapper and said, "You could be a weapon." Bracey primarily played linebacker for the Cavaliers, but did snap some as a senior in 2025. He can perform long snaps for punts about 15 yards and short snaps for field goals approximately 8 yards. The key to snapping is consistency, something Bracey said he's struggled with since high school. Long snaps need to make it to the punter's hip fast. Short snaps should be performed the same every time. Going from an inside run or going from a big play and having to snap, you have to slow your breath down, slow everything down. And it's more finesse, Bracey said. I like to think of it as golf. You have to hit the same shot every time. Bracey took many long snapper reps during UB spring camp. Since then, Joseph Stoever, a 6'2", 206-pound senior transfer from Georgia Tech, has long snapped on many occasions. During UB's control scrimmage Thursday, Stoever snapped to Tonawanda Zach McGowan, who nailed a 56-yard field goal with the wind to his back. All specialist groups are unique, Bracey said. No matter what school you're at, no matter what conference, it's always a unique group of guys, and it's the same here. Multiple personalities. I consider myself a part of the specialist unit, though they make fun of me sometimes as an outsider, but we all get together. It's almost similar to the linebackers. Will Bracy be UB's next great linebacker? The 6-foot, 235-pounder hopes to live up to the standard that Buffalo native Sean Dolak and Red Murdoch set as All-Americans with the Bulls. Bracy has to catch up on UB's linebacker U moniker. He researched the success of Buffalo's linebackers and their nickel defenses with his father. Bracy said Dolak and Murdoch were two dogs on film. I was like, oh wow, they have some guys in the linebacker room, Bracy said. So that was promising, because if they were able to thrive in this defense, why not I? And looking at Red's film, I saw some similarities. Murdoch spoke to UB linebackers Bracy, Matthew Hilty, Jordan Owens, Bradley Ilunga Bisalet, and others before the Denver Broncos drafted him in April. It's still unclear who will pair as a Bulls linebackers this fall, but Bracy loves what the unit brings. I will say this, we are a pack of dogs, and that's it, Bracy said. A pack of dogs, period. We're 14 deep, and in that 14 deep, we come in waves. In 2022, Bracy was named Virginia's Defensive Impact Player of the Year award winner as a true freshman. He collected 5 of his 6 tackles that season against Miami. In 2023, Bracy recorded a career-high 10 tackles against number 12 Tennessee. He finished his Cavaliers career with 26 tackles and 1 tackle for a loss in 20 appearances. While watching Bracy's Virginia film, Garwick said his physicality stood out immediately, though he eventually became impressed with his football knowledge and command of the defense. He was thumping blocks, Garwick said, and then he had a lot of experience. He's played a lot of different games, a lot of different environments, and we felt like this was going to be a great match for us. Nishikori tops Antonius in the second round of qualifying. Buffalo's Michael Antonius' quest for a spot in the U.S. Open main draw came to an end on Wednesday with a 6-4 loss to the Japanese veteran Kei Nishikori at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center in Flushing Meadows. Antonius, 16, fell behind early in both sets but rallied to make it a competitive match. He connected on 90% of his serves but committed 3 doubles faults, and he won only 56% of his first serves. Nishikori, 36, had 1 ace and was successful on 88% of his first serves. He won 74% on his first serves. Antonius converted 2 of his 3 breakpoint opportunities, and Nishikori was 4 of 8. Antonius, the youngest male player to win 2 International Tennis Federation tournaments in the same season, opened the tournament with a 6-1, 6-2 victory over Henry Searle of Great Britain on Tuesday. Nishikori, who was a number 4 ranked player in the world in 2015 and has won 12 championships, advanced on Thursday's final qualifying match against countryman Rei Sakamoto. Antonius was ranked number 670 in the world entering the tournament. He finished second in the French Open boys division, and he was second in Wimbledon boys doubles earlier this year. Defending U.S. Open champion Carlos Alcaraz faces a challenging road in the New York finale, while Aryna Sabalenka will also have her hands full in her bid for a three-peat following Thursday's draw. Alcaraz, who was returning to singles action after sitting out 5 months with a wrist injury, landed in the stronger bottom half of the men's draw, along with former U.S. Open champions Novak Djokovic, Daniil Medvedev, and Stan Wawrinka and Marin Cilic. The Spanish second seed will start this year's final major against Roman Safiullin and could face either Arthur Fils or Ben Shelton in the quarters before a potential semifinal showdown against Djokovic, Medvedev, Francis Tiafoe, or Brandon Nakashima. Djokovic, a 4-time U.S. Open winner who is chasing a record-setting 25th Grand Slam title, will begin in the fortnight against Argentine Mariano Navon, and should he advance, would then face either Wawrinka or Matteo Berrettini in the second round. The top seed Alexander Zverev, who won his first Grand Slam title at this year's French Open, will start against Lorenzo Sonego and could face Lorenzo Musetti in the fourth round, Alex de Molinaro in the quarters, before possible matchups against Felix Auger-Aliassime in the semis and Alcaraz in the final. On the women's side, top seed Sabalenka will play Colombian Camila Osorio in her opening match and faces a potential quarter-final clash with reigning Wimbledon champion Linda Noskova and a semifinal showdown with in-form Jessica Pegula, who finished runner-up in a pair of U.S. Open tune-up events. Sabalenka's fortnight may include a second-round date with Renata Zarazua before potential matches against Barbora Krejcikova and Diana Schneider over the next two rounds, and if the draw goes according to seed, a title match against Elena Rybakina. Former U.S. Open winner Coco Gauff, who was seeded fourth and arrives in New York fresh off winning the title in Cincinnati, was placed in the bottom half of the draw and could meet Amanda Anisimova in the quarterfinals. And for our NFL notes, the league to select Pro Bowlers game, but games end. The NFL is ending the Pro Bowl games after repeated format changes to its annual All-Star event. Beginning with the 2026 season, 88 Pro Bowlers will be selected, but the NFL no longer plans to stage an AFC-NFC game, a flag football matchups, or accompanying series of competitions. The players chosen will instead be invited to next year's Super Bowl site in Los Angeles for an in-person celebration in February. The biggest change beyond eliminating the event itself involves alternatives. Only the original 88 selections will be named Pro Bowlers, and no alternatives will be added, ending a system that expanded the list when players withdrew because of injuries, Super Bowl commitments, or other reasons. Voting remains split, with fans, players, and coaches accounting for one-third of the selection process. The Pro Bowl has always been about recognizing players who distinguish themselves as the very best in the NFL. NFL Executive Vice President Peter O'Reilly said Wednesday, "A Pro Bowl selection will return to its original purpose, honoring the best of the best. We want that distinction to carry even greater meaning to the players, their families, their clubs, and our fans." The NFL reworked the event through multiple iterations in recent years as interest in a traditional tackle all-star game declined. The AFC-NFC format was temporarily replaced by a fantasy football-style draft in 2014 before later returning in 2017. The Pro Bowl moved away from longtime host Hawaii after the 2016 edition. A tackle football game was last played in 2022 and rebranded as the Pro Bowl games for a 2023 debut with skills competitions and flag football. This past season, the Pro Bowl games were moved to Tuesday before the Super Bowl in San Francisco. Legal officials said discussions with the players helped drive the latest change, citing concerns that repeat selections for replacement had diluted an honor that had contractual and legacy implications. And a final projection from Jay Skursky. With the preseason games over, Buffalo is down to the business of making cuts. There's no more dress rehearsals. Now comes the hard part for the Buffalo Bills. The team completed its preseason Thursday night at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers at Highmark Stadium, and we won that 28-27. Pull that rabbit out of the hat. A final preseason game is generally thought to be meaningless, but don't tell that to those competing for the last few roster spots. The front office and coaching staff will collaborate during the hardest few days of the NFL calendar as the required roster trim to 53 players must be completed by Sunday. Here's the Buffalo News final projection on what that will look like. The quarterbacks will have two, Josh Allen and Kyle Allen. Cut, Shane Buechele. It's been a close competition throughout training camp between Kyle Allen and Buechele to back up Josh Allen. Head coach Joe Brady wasn't ready to name a backup ahead of Thursday's preseason final, but Kyle Allen's performance in the two preseason games was strong enough to earn him the job. Buechele did well too and shouldn't be out of work long. Provided he clears waivers, the Bills will be interested in bringing him back to the practice squad. For running backs and fullbacks, James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and Ben Van Sumeren, and cut was Frank Gore Jr. and Ian Wheeler. There have been very few updates given on the injury suffered by Johnson during the blue and red practice earlier this month, with the season opener not until September 13th. That's more than a month from the time he was hurt. Provided the Bills think he'll be ready to go by then, he should be considered safe, and the Bills consider Johnson one of the best third down backs in the league. Davis is not just a backup running back, he's an all-pro kicker. Returner last season who was working on returning punts. Both Gore and Wheeler have had their moments this summer. Unfortunately for them, they are stuck behind three talented players. Van Sumeren is one of the toughest calls on the team. Head coach Joe Brady liked the versatility. Carrying a fullback provides an offense, but is still a small part of the offensive package. Because of that, Van Sumeren must provide special teams value to make the roster. He played 11 snaps in week 1 of the preseason, and then 16 snaps on special teams against the Browns, and this is a significant amount, which is a valuable clue that Van Sumeren factors into the plans. And then for tight ends, we have Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Jackson Hawes, and the cuts will be Kaleki Latu and Shane Zylstra. Latu is a practice squad player last season who used all his call-ups, and the Bills would love to get him back in that role provided he clears waivers. The top three at the position. Knox, Kincaid, and Hawes all looked good this summer, providing the team with a strong position. The wide receivers would be DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Joshua Palmer, Keon Coleman, Skylar Bell, and Trent Sherfield. The cuts would be Stephen Gosnell, Mecole Hardman Jr., Jamori Macklin, Dante Pettis, Quentin Skinner, and Max Tomczak. For the offensive line, Deion Dawkins, Alec Anderson, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Spencer Brown, Lloyd Cushenberry, Austin Corbett, Tylen Grable, and the injured reserve is Jude Bowery, and traded was Cedric Van Pren Granger. Will cut Sincere Hainsworth, Nick Broker, Bruno Fina, Armaj Reed Adams, Demetrius Weatherspoon, and Chase Lint. And for defensive line, T.J. Sanders, Zad Oliver, Deion Walker, Landon Jackson, Zane Durant, and Dwayne Carter. Suspended is Fedarian Mathis, and cuts will be Greg Gaines and Zion Logue and Travis Clayton. For outside linebacker, Braden Chubb, Gregory Rousseau, T.J. Parker, Michael Hocht, Javon Solomon. The cuts, Cade Denhoff, Andre Jones Jr., and Mike Donna. Inside linebacker, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Caleb Alarms, or Joe Andreessen, and Keontae Jenkins. And cuts, Otis Reed IV, Theron Gaines, James Ciarlo. And for safety, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, Jelon Kilgore, and Sam Franklin. And cuts would be Geno Ward, Wanda Owens, and Takori Couch. And then cornerback, Christian Benford, Maxwell Hairston, Davison Igbin Osun, Connie Walker, D. Elford, and Jordan Hancock. And cuts would be Jordan Dunbar, Anthony Kendall, DJ Miller, and Toriano Pride Jr. And for specialists, Reed Ferguson, Tyler Bass, Tommy Doman, and cut Mitch Wisnowski. So we'll see what happens with that. And you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. And the time now is about 33 minutes past the hour. And let's move on to some advice from our Eric Thomas. Wife's gossip gets husband in hot water at work. Dear Eric, I have a stressful job with coworkers that I think are nice but inept. My boss's boss is his brother, and there are a few other family members at the company, so it's no surprise to me that people with no skills seem to have succeeded. After work, I like to blow off steam by recounting the latest idiocy to my wife. She agrees with me and has always backed me up. Recently, we were at a social event, and the subject of my work came up. For reasons I still can't understand, my wife started complaining about the people at my job. What neither she nor I realized is that one of the people we were talking too, is related to the family at my job, so now I'm in trouble and I can't shake the feeling that if my wife hasn't blabbed, we'd be fined. She says she's not at fault. Who is right? And has signed the office disgrace. And he answers, Dear office, I don't know what you're going to get much mileage out of placing the blame squarely on her shoulders or yours. Having a negative opinion is no crime, but if your wife is hearing it every day, it stands to reason that it will come spilling out elsewhere. That said, if this family is as ever present as they seem, it seems prudent to confirm the lineage of anyone with whom she's going to gossip. And here's the bright side. This awkward encounter might push you to start looking for a job you like with coworkers you respect. Easier said than done, I know, but even a step in that direction might relieve some of your frustration and allow you to talk about other things with your wife. And dear Eric, I've become small-time successful with my local art scene. Part of my practice has been to bring people new to the scene in on collaborative projects to help them get a foot in the door and meet other people in the community. Because of that, I'm now seeing an uptick of very new artists asking for my feedback on their works, and I've said yes to the first few, because I sincerely want to see what they had. Unfortunately, what I've seen so far is very rough, amateur, and I do not like it. I mean, I make plenty of bad art. It's a valuable step in the process. But I just don't know how to respond when I really struggle to identify any positives either on a technical or personal level. They trusted me with their art, so I want to respond with care and grace rather than dumping a bucket of cold water on them, but I don't know them well enough to be frank about what they need to work on, and I don't have availability to foster a long-term or one-on-one relationship to help them develop those skills. I would appreciate advice or scripts on how to respond to what I struggle to identify any positives, but I do want to make them keep making art while maintaining the boundary that I can't problem solve or mentor them. If you have any pointers on how to respond to future requests, I would appreciate those too. I'm not sure if I should start turning these down. And it's signed, Conflicted and Creative Community. I can identify there. And he answers, Dear Conflicted, consider asking these new artists what their specific areas of concern are, or whom they are referencing, what or whom they are referencing, and what they're excited about in their work. This will give you something about which to respond that's not rooted in whether or not you like it. The goal here is not to create a curriculum for them or to guide them one-on-one, but to reflect back to them what they say they're trying to do and to perhaps suggest to them one actionable step that will get them closer to it. Something like, well, you say you're trying to capture energy in your portraiture. You might want to take a look at the way Amy Sherrill positions her subjects. It's easy for these kinds of interactions to take on a mentor-mentee tenor. Try to bring it back down to a peer-to-peer by telling them that you don't feel you're in the best position to give feedback, but that you'd be happy to hear about their process and answer questions about your process. Respect from a peer can sometimes go a lot further than a thumbs down, thumbs up. Decide in advance how much of your time you can reasonably allot to these kinds of conversations too, and when you hit your cap, tell the artist that you're excited to be in community with them, but you don't have the capacity to be as responsive as you'd like. You might instead encourage them to form peer response groups or formal mentorships with others. Good answer. And now we'll move back to the front page. From Francisca Bond. Buffalo's Wing King has good taste and fun. Ruling the kingdom of wings requires a lot of administrative work. You must be the kind of person who answers both phone calls and TikTok DMs, and you should know when a text should be a call. You can't be afraid of any camera, for it may bring more awareness to your cause, and you need to attend, happily, network events for budding influencers. You must love wings, but not as much as you love people, although as Chicken Wing Ambassador, you should have a ready answer for any wing questions thrown your way. When someone asks you about the state of wings, you must be ready to say, I think the state of chicken wings is extremely strong. You are not running a restaurant or writing a cookbook. You are working mostly year-round to build and maintain tiny connections, stringing together each of the thousands of people who make up the one-of-a-kind National Buffalo Wing Festival, which is literally the stuff of movies. You are its ringmaster. You must put on a good show. Of course, there's only one Wing King, and there may only ever be one Wing King. Drew Chirza began his summer days by 5:30 a.m. working from a desk of his white column brick home in the end of a Clarence cul-de-sac. Most of his wing memorabilia and newspaper clippings are in the basement. Chirza is not overly nostalgic guy. He flows with where life is right now. He thinks the best executed Wingfest ever was last year. Chirza works on some days from an office in his old friend Sheridan Drive marketing firm. On a recent morning, he parked his Ford Bronco license plate winking in a parking lot and walked into the office wearing a white wing-patterned polo. Chirza is a tall, clean-cut 65-year-old with a playful, informal personality that suits Buffalo. A place where not even a king can put on airs and expect to be liked. He fits into and appreciates the marketing firm's younger culture where they play Frank Ocean from the speakers and have not all heard of the actor Bill Murray who starred in the movie that launched Wingfest. I lost a joke the marketing firm's media buyer, Chelsea Camarilli, about learning that not all young people know of Murray. Don't say that out loud. Chirza rattled off some statistics from memory to Camarilli about the festival's recent meta advertisement campaign. For 24 cents per person, 4,100 people clicked through a Wingfest's website on social media advertisements. I've been spending the last 5 years of my life developing relationships with influencers, Chirza said. It's wild, this whole algorithm thing, isn't it, Chelsea? He loves wings, but marketing is Chirza's great passion. It's agile and psychological. I think that's one of the things that keeps me going, Chirza said. The new age of marketing. Chirza likes the challenge of finding new faces and has good taste in fun. The Wingfest is often a farce with its competitive wing-eating competitions, bobbing for wings and blue cheese contests, and Chirza's theatrics. It appeals to a wide variety of people, including, as Chirza has found out this year, wellness influencers. Protein is big right now. Chirza works, as always, playing notification and whack-a-mole. He welcomes each bid for a contact like it's a part of the circus. The ultimate goal is to complete every task on the Wingfest's long, elaborate series of Google spreadsheets. All he has to do on this morning is figure out exactly who will judge which competition and which business will be under which tent and which influencer will show up on which day and promote what kind of content and how to please the sponsors and make sure the artist fixes the typos on the brochure when the brochure can be posted on the website because it's really crunch time. And will the mayor come to the press conference? Wow. Who does he know who knows the mayor well? Are press conferences still worthy of the effort? And how exactly does the office coffee machine work? This is the gritty work of a modern-day king. We got 2 weeks left, and there's not 2 weeks. There's 14 days times 24 hours in my book because I could stay up all night, Chirza said. All you do is email people and text people and do whatever you need on social media. There's very little getting together with people anymore, so it allows you to work more hours because it's all email and text. How do you feel about that? I asked. Well, it doesn't matter. It's just the way it is, Chirza laughs. Honest to God, I like the personal touch myself, but I understand that if everybody's too busy, everybody's busy with their personal lives, their professional lives, I think everybody's stressed out. I just think things have changed, but I never complain. I just adapt. I accept and I adapt. I think especially as a marketing person, you have to accept and adapt. That's the kind of guy I am. I hate complainers. It's about solutions. Later in the morning, Chirza finds out that his friend, possibly the most talented Instagram actor in Buffalo, who also happens to be a lawyer, William Mattar, is filming a podcast with a guest in another room. Chirza walks up to the door. The guest, he's told, is Chris Collins. Does Chirza know him? Oh, God, yeah, Chirza said, and then thought about it. Oh, wait, I know Chris Collins, a congressman. Who's Chris Collins? He's a social media influencer, says one of the people producing the podcast. Chirza, it turns out, knows this Chris Collins, too. You know my mom, I think, Collins tells Chirza when he walks in a room. Chirza is invited immediately onto their podcast. You look just like a Collins, Chirza said. Every Collins went to St. Joe's. 25 years ago, when Chirza saw the local newspaper column asking why no one in Buffalo capitalized on the city's wing origins by hosting a festival, he got to work. He was already running his own food promotion company, sitting in on local charity boards, and he knew he was the right Buffalo guy for the job. I just thought, and I love wings, but this would be really cool to be able to promote Buffalo, he said. After the workday, Teresa flicks through a quarter century's worth of Wingfest media coverage, posters, and photographs in his basement. Memory lane isn't just a well-trodden path for him, but the memories flood back. His daughters when they were young. The year Wingfest got a little too big. The story that still makes him mad. The stories that were so special to make him tear up, and now they're framed. The time he appeared on Bobby Flay's TV show, the Today Show performance, the VHF tape of Osmosis Jones, the movie that started it all, starring, have you heard of him? Bill Murray. I became a real Buffalo guy. People come up to me all the time and say, thanks for what you're doing all the time, Teresa said. I feel fulfilled, and if I drop tomorrow, it's all good. Not that I want to drop tomorrow. Teresa has no plans to retire. He thinks the state of Wingfest, likes the state of Wingfest, is strong. I'm going to the grave with this thing, he said. I'll be weekend at Bernie's. I think they'll roll me out. Maybe he wasn't open to adaptation, or if Wings lost their relevance, the Wingfest would peter out, but Teresa looks at the changing world with a curious expression. You know, it's funny. Some festivals, they lose their mojo. Their demographic ages out, Teresa said. We're always going after the demographics, and I think wings are just, it's a special food that everybody loves in Buffalo and people around the country love. After 25 years, the crown feels natural. It's part of my life. It's part of my passion, he said. It's part of my soul. And from CNN's Adam Cancrin and Krishna Holmes, Republicans privately worried that Trumpalooza will be a washout. President Trump has touted his one-of-a-kind midterm convention as a spectacle his party needs to re-energize voters and alter its political fortunes ahead of the midterms. But as a two-day extravaganza approaches, the Republicans are privately questioning if it strikes the right tone among the electorate's tightening budgets and the wisdom of diverting candidates from their districts just weeks out from Election Day. Further compounding concerns, expensive entrance fees for lawmakers, competing events like the start of the NFL season and 9/11 commemorations, and some states' parties struggling to drum up enthusiasm with their members. And then there's the overarching fear that an event once dubbed Trumpalooza, Trumpapalooza, will indeed end up being far more about promoting the present. I've heard people say, why are we doing this? What's going on? Said Reb Wayne, a Texas-based Republican consultant. It was a good idea at the time, but if we've gotten closer to it, I'm not sure it's going to serve much benefit. The rising apprehensions comes as Republican candidates search for ways to defy the national headwinds arrayed against the GOP, including entrenched voter anger over the cost of living and frustration of the ongoing war in Iran. The party that holds the White House traditionally loses seats in the midterms, a dynamic that Republicans acknowledge already puts them at a disadvantage. But without Trump on the ballot and polls showing deep dissatisfaction with the country's trajectory, GOP leaders worry it will be even more difficult to get the broad MAGA coalition that came out in 2024 to show up again. What is always the biggest issue when Trump is not on the ballot? Voters don't show up, said one GOP lawmaker in a competitive race. So what's Trump trying to do? Motivate the base to come out? Trump and his political team conceived of the midterm convention last year as a fresh way to engage those Republican voters and convince them to leave the ballot box. But the broader political mood has worsened in recent months, and even those who still see merit in making a big show of party unity have doubts about the convention's execution. One Republican operative involved in internal discussions around the convention acknowledged that the political climate has shifted. Have also argued that there's still some benefit to be squeezed from a multi-day event organized by the Republican National Committee, offering candidates an opportunity to showcase themselves on a national stage and juice their fundraising. Party operatives requiring Republicans to spend 2 days off the campaign trail. It's not easy to get to Dallas, said one person close to the White House. They should have done it in Florida or D.C. Dallas was chosen in part because it could host such a big event, an RNC official said. Some lawmakers have griped about the entrance fees, $25,000 and up for House members, said people familiar with the matter, although some downplayed it as a standard request meant to boost parties' fundraising. It's not the members themselves, it's the donor money, said a Republican lawmaker, chalking up the complaints to broader skepticism about whether the event will ultimately be worth vulnerable members' time. Puck first reported complaints about entrance fees, and adding to their worries, the convention will take place on the same night as two first games of the NFL season, pitting its primetime speakers against the most watched sport in the country. I don't understand the programming still. It seems to be just 5 hours of speeches, said one GOP donor, adding that they were mainly approaching the convention as a networking event. Some Republican officials nevertheless argued that the convention could offer a boost to the few dozen candidates whose races will determine control of Congress, and at minimum, there was little downside in trying something new to capture voters' attention. Republicans nevertheless acknowledge that the convention will inevitably revolve around Trump, who's slated to headline the second day and be a constant presence throughout the event. With the White House still consumed by the war in Iran and struggling to ease consumer costs, some in the GOP cringed at the prospect of focusing even more attention on Trump's presidency and record. The president, they worried, is just as likely to spend his own speech boasting about his White House ballroom and dismissing affordability concerns as he's promoting the most popular elements of the party's event agenda. But multiple sources involved in the convention discussions waved off reservations about putting Trump in close proximity to the vulnerable Republicans trying to keep their seats, arguing that at this late date in the election cycle, their fates will be intertwined nonetheless. Is it the idea that a Republican is going to be at the convention and all of a sudden Democrats are going to run ads tying them to Trump, said one of the sources? Trump is in every single ad already. Hundreds are killed in a flash in the Himalayas. This is from World News. From Reuters. Rescuers searched Himalayan valleys and hillsides on Thursday after a flash flood that killed at least 359 people and left nearly 1,000 missing, as Nepal and China warned of a risk of fresh flooding from water pooling in two lakes. Both countries said a glacier collapse on Wednesday morning sent a huge torrent of rock, ice, mud, and debris cascading through Himalayan mountain river systems, sweeping through villages and key infrastructures down a route thronged by trekkers and pilgrims that links Kathmandu with Lhasa in Tibet. Of those missing, at least 540 are foreigners. The sheer amount of water and debris stirred up now risks triggering a further disaster. Nepal's disaster management authority warned that a lake formed by debris blocking the Botekashi River at the flood site was rising and at risk of bursting while on the other side of the border. China said that some 3 million cubic meters of water, the equivalent of about 1,200 Olympic-sized swimming pools, was expected to flow into an already dammed lake over the next 3 days. There's a high risk that the lake could breach, with peak flow expected around Tuesday. China state media says, citing the Water Resources Ministry, the volume of water is continuing to increase, and so is the risk. Zhu Jinfeng, the researcher at the ministry's hydrology department, told the state broadcaster CCTV. They've yet to reach the worst-hit area on the Chinese side of the border. The Gairong border crossing by Thursday evening, state media reports indicated. Footage on Wednesday showed enormous torrents of muddy water and debris tearing through structures in the border, crossing the area within seconds and engulfing people trying to flee. All the buildings in the border crossing complex, including the border gate, were destroyed by the mudslide. Footage filmed from a military helicopter surveying the area and the broadcast on state television showed the entire compound was reduced to an unrecognizable mass of destruction, caked in thick, muddy debris and almost devoid of any sign of civilization, footage showed. In Nepal, the Red Cross said entire villages had been destroyed and impassable roads and bridges had left communities cut off. The full scale of the disaster remains unclear, it added. Nepal's Home Minister Sudan Gurung said the focus remained on finding survivors. Rescue teams located 100 missing Indian visitors, mostly pilgrims, and 25 Chinese workers in the worst-hit region around Trishuli. The flood came in suddenly and exploded like a bomb, said survivor Janak Bahadur in Nepal's Devigat on Thursday. The river looked small from a distance, but it suddenly started overflowing and swept through. The missing foreigners in Nepal belong to more than 24 countries, including 288 from India, 63 from the United States, 51 from Malaysia, 34 from Australia, 33 from Britain, and 25 from Canada. With local hospitals unable to accommodate all the bodies, district authorities were setting up tents and making arrangements for families to claim their dead relatives, he said. Ganesh Ariel, the administrator of Chitwan district, said the authorities have recovered 103 bodies from the river system in his district, which is about 60 miles from the worst-hit region from Trishuli. Nepal's Prime Minister Balendra Shah left by road to assess the flood situation in one of the worst affected districts of Nuwakot, his office said on social media. The disaster is a major challenge for Shah's 5-month-old government, but officials said the country has systems and officials who have experience in handling such tragedies, including the 2015 earthquakes that killed nearly 9,000 people. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, August 28th of 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, please call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been J.J. Patek, and thank you for listening.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability